Nashville, and welcome to the Nashville Daily Podcast. I am your co-host, Stuart Deming, and today's episode is brought to you by XPLR Tours. If you want to learn about the city of Nashville, come take a walking tour with us. Visit XPLRtours.com, and you can use the code ND10 to take 10% off of your ticket purchase, and you can learn about the incredible city of Nashville, from the Tennessee State Capitol to the Country Music Hall of Fame and Bridgestone Arena. We talk about a lot of things in that 2 hours, so come take a tour with us at XPLRtours.com. Aaron, there's no update on the bear. I don't know where the bear was last sighted. We talked about it yesterday. It was in Smyrna, the last sighting. But we do have exciting news. Buc-ee's has submitted plans for Clarksville. So we're going to be diving deep into that topic tomorrow.
Yeah, so maybe next we'll get a beaver sighting in Nashville or something like that. So.
Yeah, a beaver sighting.
Yeah, so
there was one on the Cumberland River a while ago. So right across from the Cumberland Park, there was that old boat dock right there. There was a beaver that used to live right there.
Maybe that's he's the scouting manager, the location manager for Buc-ee's. So maybe they'll put one right on the Cumberland River. No, that would be terrible.
That would be terrible.
All right. So today's guest, we are excited to announce we have another Nashville mayoral candidate on the podcast today, and that is Matt Wiltshire. Matt, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be here. I did not realize that this was a wildlife podcast, but I'm excited to hear about all the wildlife in Nashville.
We were expecting TWRA today.
Yeah. Have you seen the bald eagle that lives in downtown?
I have seen the bald eagle.
Okay,
it's pretty sweet.
It's awesome. Like when you're just standing on the pedestrian bridge and the bald eagle just flies under you, and you're like, "That's awesome."
They really are majestic.
Yeah,
like it's pretty spectacular to see.
He's watching out for he's looking for that beaver.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's definitely looking for that beaver or the big catfish that are the size of a kayak.
Yeah.
I saw once a bald eagle that took off near the Natchez Trace Bridge. It was sitting right there, and it took off at the Natchez Trace Bridge when I was walking over it. And you're like, oh, that thing is massive. So, Matt,
that would have been a pretty majestic photo if you'd had your camera ready for that.
I did not. I just had
Natchez Trace Bridge, the
eagle,
bald eagle taking off. Like, it's pretty badass.
So, Matt, you were born and raised here in Middle Tennessee in Nashville. So give us your background and how you got to where you are.
Sure. So yeah, you gave the origin story. Born and raised in Nashville. My father was the executive director of the Legal Aid Society, which is like the public defender, but for civil cases instead of criminal cases. And my mom was a professor at Fisk and then at Vanderbilt, where she helped start the Women's Studies program. And I shouldn't be defined by our parents. None of us should be defined by our parents, but they did help start the very first neighborhood association in Nashville. And
for what neighborhood?
For Belmont Hillsborough neighborhood near Vanderbilt, where my mom was a professor at the time. And they started with Gene and Penny Tassell, who longtime Nashvillians will recognize. The bridge over I-40 there is actually the Gene Tassell Bridge, and really great folks in neighborhood and community building. And that's part of what is motivating me now to run for mayor, this idea of building community, building neighborhoods, and they were great folks. So hit the parent lottery for sure. And then the rest of the professional story, after going away for college, worked in finance for 15 years, a couple years in San Francisco, 6 or 7 years in New York, and then moved back to Nashville and worked for a firm here called Avondale Partners, which was sort of a successor firm to J.C. Bradford and Equitable, two longtime Nashville firms that I'm sure you guys as Nashville historians know. So worked there for 6 or 7 years. And during that time, I got more involved in the community. I was actually the chair of the board of Hands on Nashville during the May 2010 floods.
How was that experience?
It was wild. It was a wild experience.
Because we just had the president of Hands on Nashville on probably about 3 weeks ago, a month ago.
A good bit ago, yeah.
I think it was around May 1st is when we had her on. So tell us about that experience of the flood of 2010.
It was the backstory on that is actually really interesting as well. So the experience of the flood itself was, I mean, so unanticipated. I mean, even in the midst of it, those of you, I don't know if you were here then, but even as it was happening, I don't think people understood how impactful it was going to be. And then it really was just sort of devastating and sort of sporadic, right? You would have particular pockets of neighborhoods that were deeply affected, whole swaths of the county that were, certainly Bellevue in particular, some other areas that were hit hard. But then there would be one block that was badly hit and another block not bad at all. And so it really, that experience highlighted for me the importance of public-private partnerships, because about 6 months before the flood hit, Hands-On Nashville actually led a tabletop exercise with the city of Nashville about how the city should respond to a flood.
To a flood, wow.
And so the city was really well prepared for that experience. And it also just highlights the importance of public-private partnership, folks working together, nonprofits, getting people involved. And I've always been drawn to capacity-building organizations. So Center for Nonprofit Management, I was on the board of, which helps nonprofits be more effective. I think direct service organizations are wonderful, important. I've got diabetes, as we were talking about earlier. The JDRF is a great organization, but I'm really more drawn to capacity building organizations. And Hands-On Nashville is an example of that. They help, as I'm sure you guys heard, they help nonprofits manage their volunteers, attract volunteers, get volunteers to plug in effectively. And that's what Hands-On Nashville did during the flood. And it really, the story of Nashville is one where the city responded so effectively. And
I don't think there's any other case study in the country where a city responded to the devastation that Nashville experienced
so effectively, to the point that like the national news sort of came on and then left. It was like, oh well, things kind of seem fine here.
Well, even to the tornado, like to talk about that, like there was a point after the tornado, Hands-On Nashville said we do not have the capacity to take on any other volunteers.
Yeah, and that's a great thing for Hands-On Nashville, but really speaks to the volunteer spirit of this city. It's one of the things that I love so much about Nashville is neighbors helping neighbors, but people helping strangers they've never met before. It really is just a sort of an inspiring thing. So it inspired me to get back to the professional story. About a year later, I had the opportunity to join Carl Dean in the mayor's office as the director of economic and community development. And that was a very different time in our city's history. The unemployment rate here was over 8%. There were a lot of folks who were really struggling. We were not the it city at that time.
Remind us what year this is.
So it's 2011.
Cool.
Yep. So in spring of 11, I leave the career in finance that I enjoyed very much and joined the mayor's office. And I ended up, this is right before Carl Dean was reelected. I ended up, I took the gamble that he would be reelected. I think he only got 80% of the vote.
2008 he was elected, and then 2012 he was.
So we are on off-year elections, right?
Okay.
So 07,
yep.
He was elected. So I joined in May of 11. The election was in August of 11.
Okay.
He got like 80% of the vote. I'm not sure who the other 20% were voting for.
I don't think that'll happen again in Nashville.
Probably not going to happen, at least not until we have another re-elect.
Yeah.
But yes, I served the entirety of his second term. I thought I'd go back to the private sector, but ended up, Megan Barry was elected. She asked me to stay. I served the whole time she was mayor. And then David Briley came in, obviously. He asked me to stay. Again, I thought I'd go back to the private sector. He asked me to stay. I served the first year or so of his tenure. And then at that point, I looked around the city and it just seemed like there were other challenges. And so I worked with Mayor Briley to help develop a very ambitious affordable housing plan.
And I think we've covered that here on the podcast.
Under one roof.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was a really ambitious plan. This is now 2019, spring of 19. And I moved to MDHA, the Public Housing Authority, to help implement that plan. And was there from 19 for 3 years. And then in spring of 2022, a little over a year ago, left and went on a listening tour and then launched my campaign for mayor in July of 22.
When you were going on that listening tour, what were some of the things that really stood out to you that maybe you didn't expect to hear, or things that you really thought that Nashvillians were genuinely kind of hungry for when somebody running for mayor?
So two things. I'd say the first is there was just an overwhelming sense of the basic things aren't happening well in our city.
Yep.
And it wasn't so much of a surprise because we all knew it, right? The trash, there had been this whole issue
for months,
6 months before that we have this significant tax increase and then we're literally like not picking up the trash.
Yep.
But there was just this overwhelming sense of like, man, things aren't working right. And then it's potholes and downtown seems like it's not being managed well. So there was an overall sense of not sort of major structural issues, although there are some, and we'll talk about those in a second, as much as just blocking and tackling and taking care of the stuff that is within our control. So it was that, and then it was bigger issues that the city was facing, and crime being high among those. And the data do not say that there is a massive crime issue, but there is certainly a very deep-seated sense of like things are not safe. Certainly not as safe as the city I grew up in.
Yeah, and if you look at the trends nationwide, if you look at San Francisco, a city that you lived at for a while, like in the last 2 weeks, a major hotel said they're closing. AT&T said yesterday they're closing, and it's all because of mostly crime. They're saying it's because of fiscal stuff, but it's crime. So we have to be on the forefront of being able to prevent that somehow. The question I have in the sense of safety is, what would you do as mayor to increase the safety of the individuals in the county?
Yeah, there are two broad categories on this. Mm-hmm. The first is we need to have a fully staffed police force. And this is not saying, hey, we need to be over-policed or more policed, but honestly, we need to have a fully staffed police force.
We have a shortage of 225 officers.
We're now down to about 100.
100, okay.
We just graduated a class about a month ago.
Okay.
Different candidates cite different numbers, but I've actually spoken with Chief Drake, so we're about 100 light today.
And that's one officer per 1,000 residents, give or take.
The total that we so there's 705,000 residents. Mm-hmm. So I guess it would be in terms of one per 750. But the staffing level, you're saying what would the staffing level be? Yeah. So the staffing, a fully staffed police department would be about 1.9 per 1,000. I think I'd have to go back and check the numbers. But so part of it is having a fully staffed police force so that the police officers can have time to get out of their cars and not just respond to emergency, but rather get out and engage in proactive community policing. Mm-hmm. And this is actually something we did at MDHA when I was there. We paid extra dollars. MDHA was paying extra dollars to the police department so that officers would have time to get out of their cars, walk around, build relationships with the community. Yep. It's better for the community. It's certainly better for the officers. It's more effective policing. And it's a way for folks not to feel policed by the police, but rather engage with guardians. And I think Chief Drake is doing a tremendous job, but we need to have a fully staffed police force.
Yeah,
so that's part of it.
That was one thing growing up in like a small town. I knew every officer's name.
You knew them, right? And so you could build relationships, and over time they got to know, like, man, something's not right over here, and they knew how to anticipate problems. And right now, unfortunately, they're just having to be reactive. So that's part of it. I do, in addition to that, strongly endorse Partners in Care, which is the program to have mental health professionals go with police to emergency calls, certain emergency calls to try and de-escalate.
Yeah, that's been a fantastic program.
It's been successful and needs to be expanded. It's, again, another better way to leverage the officers that we have. So it's about that. And let me also really endorse the work that Sheriff Darren Hall's doing. If you haven't had Darren on the program, a big fan of his. So not Darren, Sheriff Hall. Give him the respect he's due there. But he's really doing innovative stuff in this city, in the country, for how to meet individuals. I mean, right now our jails are, as you all probably know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, this country deinstitutionalized mentally ill, did not provide individuals who experience mental illness issues, did not provide the community-based services that were supposed to replace that. Yep. And so that's why we have such a challenge with individuals experiencing homelessness. It's part of the reason. So anyway, that's all of that I just talked about is the first part, how to address crimes that are happening, fully staffed police force, using mental health professionals, et cetera. But even more important than that, although it will take longer for this to take root, is having programs in place to provide more opportunities for kids to make more good decisions. Summer youth employment programs. There are things that we need to be doing to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. And really it's, having a fully funded, high-functioning, world-class public education system. It's having more opportunities for kids to do things like this. You guys have started and created a podcast, right? Like, you guys have created something that did not exist. A lot of kids don't feel that they have the confidence that you all have to be able to do something like that. We need to instill that in kids so that they choose positive outlets for their energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the schools is a interesting conversation. Yeah, because I think that a lot of times it feels like money continues to be poured in. The results on the output seems like they're taking in the money. The output's not seen. What do you think are some of the issues between the dollars going in and the outputs going out that maybe aren't getting the results that we've seen before? What do you think that is different about, okay, if we put more money in, what changes in the middle for the outputs to be different?
Yeah, great question. First, let's set the table on the money side, right? Nashville and compliments or credit to Mayor Cooper and the Metro Council. Nashville has increased teacher pay for the last couple of years. Nashville teachers are now the highest paid teachers in the state, which, by the way, is only appropriate. It's the most expensive city in the state. We ought to have the highest paid teachers just because it's such an expensive place to live. But we've increased teacher pay over the last couple of years. So today, the tuition at some of the elite private schools is $35,000 a year. Even with the increases in teacher pay, Metro Nashville public schools are now spending about $15,000 a year per student. Mm-hmm. So, 40% of what the tuition is at the elite private schools. And as you all know, the kids who are coming to Metro Nashville public schools are amazing kids, but they are bringing challenges with them into the classroom.
Right.
Homelessness, hunger, poverty. There are 135 languages spoken in the homes of kids who attend Metro Nashville Public Schools. That diversity is amazing. It is a richness for our city, but it creates challenges for teaching English, right? That kids who you're paying $35,000 a year do not have those same challenges. So setting the table first on the money side, I hear the concern that we're throwing a lot of money at it, but we're spending 40% of the amount that we're spending per pupil on elite private schools. So set the table there. But what do we do? That's not to make excuses, and that's not to say, oh, we've got to double the funding for schools. But I think there are a lot of things. The reality is we are asking our teachers to do an impossible task. We are asking them to solve all of society's problems. Solve homelessness, solve domestic violence, solve trauma, solve hunger, solve poverty. And we're asking them to do it with insufficient resources. And the example that I'll give of we're not providing enough resources for the kids in Metro Nashville Public Schools. So my oldest son graduated from Hillsborough High School last year. Amazing school. Really phenomenal things happening at Hillsborough and other schools around Nashville. But they don't have a college counselor at Hillsborough.
Really?
Harpeth Hall has 3. Harpeth Hall's a third the size of Hillsborough High School. And it's not so much about having a college counselor, but just an example of the insufficient.
That is super important.
Right?
Yeah.
Super insufficient resources to help the kids. And so my answer to your question, so having set the table there, my answer to your question is we need to provide a lot more resources so that the kids are being addressed, their needs are being met, so that the teachers can focus on teaching and the kids can focus on learning in the classroom. And I think to do that, there probably do need to be some increases in funding, but it's also engaging the many wonderful nonprofits that we have in Nashville to get more engaged in the public school system to meet the kids where they are.
Yeah, I was going to ask how can a private entity come in and help?
Yeah, I think, look, if you haven't had Hal Cato on, he's the new leader of the Community Foundation. I guess he's been in place maybe 6 or 8 months at this point.
And he was the founder of Thistle Farms.
He wasn't the founder. He was one of the founders of actually Hands on Nashville. Way back when. He worked at Thistle Farms. He was the CEO. I think Becca Stevens, maybe some others founded it, but Hal was the CEO there. Then considered running for mayor. I'm very glad he didn't run for mayor. Hal's amazing. But I'm glad in part because I think he is perfectly situated and suited at the Community Foundation to be a convening entity to bring folks together so that we can have clear goals and objectives and then figure out how to plug folks in to deal with the many things that we were just talking about.
That's great. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is you have you're a father of 6 kids.
Father and stepfather.
Yep.
I mean, I claim them all, but I want to be respectful.
So there's a big conversation piece happening around is Nashville family friendly?
Yeah.
And could we get into that topic of what type of things would you do with your family and
even growing up? What kind of things did you do with your family?
You're at Opryland, so
yeah.
Although I didn't go to Opryland that often. I was actually just talking to my wife about this the other day.
Okay.
We only went like 5 or 6 times. My parents had a farm out in Houston County, and so every weekend and summers, I was on the farm working.
And that's the best thing to learn.
We weeding in the garden and raising beef cattle. And so I had a very privileged, blessed childhood growing up, but it was a different experience. But I still did lots of great things in Nashville. I remember as a kid going to the fairgrounds when there was still a theme park there, one rickety old wooden roller coaster and some fun games. And I do think, to your question, Nashville doesn't have enough things for kids to do. And I think what we can do as mayor is, one, try and recruit more. The Gary Ayers have talked about bringing a sort of reading-based theme park, Storyville Gardens. Amazing, right? That would be a great opportunity for summer youth employment, for things for kids to do, focus on reading. I'm not here as their hype person, but I am excited about what they're talking about doing.
We have hyped it up so much.
Yeah. So things like that. But I think as mayor, it's making sure that our parks and community center programming is meeting kids where they are. I mean, we've got great community centers around the city.
And they're underutilized.
I think there's a lot more that we can do as a city there to bring kids in and utilize those facilities.
What do you do now with your kids? Where do you guys go? Where are the places that you guys really enjoy?
So we've got 5 teenagers and a 5-year-old. So my wife had 3 kids. I had 2. We got married and we have 1 together. So it is a diverse set of things. With the teenagers, I'm just happy to get like a meal with them sometimes. But there's with the 5-year-old, the Nashville Zoo is amazing. It is fantastic. A world-class zoo and has the opportunity with sort of land that it has to expand even further. Super excited about what the zoo is doing. And, the zoo's expensive to go to, but they are doing some great community outreach. And so just really endorse the Nashville Zoo. Of course, the Nashville Science Center is great. Going to the parks, Edwin Warner Park, Beeman Park up in Jolton. So there are some great parks that we can go to for unstructured play, which I think is just a great thing to do. But I do think that we need more family-friendly options to have for the kids.
Yeah. Transitioning into the adult playground, Broadway, and like the attractions and everything like that. You've talked about these issues a lot on your campaign trail, so I don't want to get into this too much. But what are some things that you are looking forward to as far as what challenges are you looking forward to address? If you're elected mayor on the side of the tourism side, we've heard, I don't want to talk about the things that have already been talked about because they've been talked about a lot, but what challenges are you looking forward to solve in that arena?
Yeah. I mean, first, unlike some of the other candidates, I am not someone who's bashing the tourism industry. I mean,
it's our bread and butter.
It is our bread.
Besides the hospital industry.
Yeah.
Or healthcare.
Look, I mean, here's the reality. We don't have a state income tax, right? Sales taxes are roughly 25% of the budget of the city. And the tourism industry provides jobs to 70,000 Nashvillians.
Yeah.
It is vitally important. Now, that doesn't mean that we just sort of let loose and, go crazy, because I think, like anything else, it is important to steward it and to grow it in a healthy way. But here's the statistics that you guys probably know this, but maybe not all your listeners do. Downtown represents 0.4% of the acreage of the county, so less than 0.5%. Generates 12% of the property taxes and 26% of the sales and use taxes.
Wow.
A quarter of the sales and use taxes come from 0.5% of our county. So it just speaks to the importance of it. We need to make sure that we're using those revenues to invest in sidewalks and stormwater around the county and schools. But it does speak to the importance of that industry. So with that set up, my answer to your question is, I think we need to make sure that we are good stewards of the tourism industry here. I'm excited, and I've talked to the folks at the CVC about this, about diversifying the tourism industry here to highlight more, the fashion industry, the creative community. I think it is important to show off the other great things that Nashville has to offer, but I am not someone who's going to sort of bash downtown because it's easy to do politically, but is actually just bad for the city economically.
Yeah, and a lot of what we've done with our Explore Nash side of things of our business is show off. We've made hundreds of videos about things to do in Nashville.
Yeah.
How many of them are about downtown?
Yeah.
1%.
Yeah.
Because people, they're going to find their way downtown. They don't need us for that.
And they should. It's great.
But the rest of our videos are how to explore Nashville outside
The rest
of
of
that.
it.
That 0.4% or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I went to high school at Hume-Fogg.
It's a great school. Like
It's a great school. Great school.
The aesthetic, like the castle looking thing, like
Love
it's just,
it.
Yeah.
But the funny part about it is when I graduated, so I'm dating myself here. I graduated from high school in 1992. In 1992, when you walk out of Hume-Fogg, you did not turn left.
No.
There was nothing down there.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing down there. And this was before Bridgestone. This was before, I think there was like literally a service merchandise. Like there was like
There's peep shows. And,
Peep shows.
I think at that time there used to be like some cafes and small restaurants down there.
But I mean, it was a ghost.
Yeah.
Tootsie's was there.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to see what's the evolution.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So earlier you mentioned structural issues.
Yeah.
So we noticed after the Christmas Day bombing, there was a ton of structural issues with the pipes on 2nd Avenue.
Yeah.
We can get more into that topic.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things on this. First, some of your most devoted Nashville infrastructure listeners would know that Nashville actually has a combined stormwater and sewer system.
Yep.
So literally our sewer pipes and our stormwater pipes flow into one pipe. And so if there's a heavy rain, then that will flow out. Mm-hmm. It happens to be bad and happens to violate EPA policy. So we're actually under a consent decree from the Environmental Protection Agency to separate our stormwater and sewer. That is an expensive endeavor.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time. Scott Potter, who heads up the water department, has been working on that diligently for years, but there's a lot more that needs to happen. We just have, not old by European standards, but by American standards, we've got some old infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and so we're working on that.
And to speak into that, like Sobro, south of Broadway, that area was known for a severe flooding of sewage.
Yeah.
For like 50 years.
Yeah.
And it was a really disgusting area of town.
Yeah.
And now it's like becoming the luxury market of town.
Yeah.
But it's something that we do need to address. Now let's get into more of the infrastructure topic.
Yeah.
So what solutions do you have for transit?
So Nashville, I feel like I've been consistent now. I'm answering these questions that let's set the table and then let's talk about the answer. Nashville's a little bit of a weird place. I mean, you guys know this, right? Folks live in Bellevue, work downtown. Live downtown, work in Hendersonville. Live in Hendersonville, work in Brentwood. Live in Brentwood, work near Vanderbilt. Live near Vanderbilt, work in Donaldson, right? So there isn't a hub and spoke system here. So a large fixed infrastructure mass transit system, I don't think would meet Nashville where it is today.
And can I ask a little bit of context into that as well?
Please.
With you being in DHA, was that a problem that was very much on the forefront of your all's mind as people are not living where they work as much?
Yeah, I mean, MDHA, it's certainly an issue. Lots of folks who are residents at MDHA properties rely on the bus system, and so it is important to have a high-functioning bus system. It is one of the reasons I think it's so important to not just suburbanize poverty and push folks out to the edges. We need to make sure that there's affordable housing in the core of the city where the jobs are, in particular hospitality jobs we talked about.
Because they're working the hospitality jobs.
Lots of times.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I do think it's important to make sure that we continue to develop in a way that will allow folks to live near where their jobs are. So part of the reason that we have this weird commuting structure is because we literally tore up our trolley system. I mean, you guys.
We've covered it. We've covered it tremendously.
It is probably one of the biggest regrets of this city. I feel like it should be.
I mean, we tore it up. We had it, we tore it up. So, all right, so that's the context then. So what do we do about it? Well, I think, one, we need to make operational improvements. The better bus system, there's some operational improvements that we can make to make sure that our transit system that we have today is operating more efficiently and effectively. Along those same lines, I think we need to invest in a network operations center so that we can and we need to invest in some infrastructure with our street lights so that they're synchronized better to just improve the throughput of the existing veins and arteries that we have. Those are some investments. They cost money, but will improve the throughput of what we have today. That's important.
Which then will improve quality of life.
Improve quality of life. It's gonna shorten your commute, lower your blood pressure, lower your frustration. You drive one stoplight, you stop. Drive to the next stoplight and stop. drive the next stoplight and stop. Like that's insane, right? So we can get rid of some of that just by being smarter with the infrastructure we have. But long term, I think we need to find places where we can make smart investments that have a return. And the first one that's obvious to me is, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Denver.
Yes,
been to Denver?
Multiple times.
Denver Airport is fantastic. I think it's located somewhere in Kansas. I'm not sure where it is.
It's 30 minutes away from the town. Yeah.
But the light rail from the Denver Airport to downtown Denver is
remarkable.
Phenomenal.
Yep.
Phenomenal. The advantage that we have is that our airport is located 7 miles from downtown. And if you were to come out of the airport, turn right, and go down Donaldson Pike to Murfreesboro Pike, and then come down Murfreesboro Pike to downtown, that 7-mile route down Murfreesboro Pike is an incredible opportunity.
Yep.
And the throwback to transit.
And it's remarkably straight. Like it's not a big crooked road.
Not a big crooked road. And even more importantly, if you were here in 12, 13, you would remember the AMP.
Yep.
The AMP was defeated in part because there was insufficient right-of-way along West End. So a lot of right-of-way along Murfreesboro Pike.
Yeah.
The 55 Murfreesboro is the highest ridership bus line that we have today. And there are incredible opportunities to build affordable, attainable housing at transit stops along a redeveloped Murfreesboro Pike. So to me, that investment is one that just makes sense. There's right-of-way available. Because the 55 Murfreesboro is the highest ridership bus line, we can probably get the federal government to pay 60 to 70% of the cost of the program.
That'd be fantastic.
The airport authority can actually pay for all the infrastructure from the airport to the first transit stop. So that's another 10%.
Yeah.
So OPM, baby. OPM. Other people's money. Other people's money. And it's a way to, look, it'll take some of the traffic off of I-40 and I-60, I-24. But even more importantly is the affordable housing at transit stops and building a culture of transit to lay the groundwork for future transit investment beyond that.
Yeah. With you being in the mayor's office for so long, what were some of the challenges that they faced on that issue of, was it they couldn't get the message out effectively? Was it something related to they couldn't get the right deals in place before they presented the plan? What were some of the things that really kind of did not get the buy-in that we saw or that we hope to see with future plans?
Yeah, now that'd be a great show, a post-mortem on the 2018, I think it was called Let's Move Nashville.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple things. I mean, let's just be honest. Megan Barry was the chief proponent of that plan, and that election was in May of 18, and she had to leave office in March of 18. She was the chief proponent, and when she left, there was a vacuum there. And look, big transit plans, you're asking voters to trust you, right?
Yep.
Like it's, hey, we're going to do this big investment, and I know you can't see it today, you can't feel it today, but it's going to work out. And I think there was certainly some erosion of trust. I can't quantify how much that impacted it.
Sure.
The vote lost 65-35. What I can tell you definitively is in a neutral environment, that's not a 65-35 against. Is it 55-45? Is it 50-50? I don't know, but it wasn't 65-35 against. I can tell you that definitively. To the deeper question, even setting that issue aside, I do think that lots of people felt like, what's in it for me?
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, certainly if you're on the edges of the county, or if one of the proposed transit lines didn't come near your neighborhood, you looked at it and you're like, so I'm increasing my sales tax, and like, I don't know what's in it for me.
Yeah.
That was why I think there was a lot of opposition for it.
So, Matt, I have one final question for you. What's the biggest thing you learned in the private sector compared to the public sector?
That is a great question. I mean, I think oftentimes we see folks running for office and saying, hey, I'm going to run the government like a business. And I understand the idea of that. The reality is government is not a business. There are business principles, return on investment, opportunity cost, things that folks in business know, making payroll, right? Paying the bills. But government is not a business. And let me tell you specifically the best example of that. If you're a company, and you're making a decision to build a new factory or to invest in more marketing dollars, you can make a calculation which one of these things will have a bigger impact on our earnings per share, or some sort of common metric to evaluate two choices that you have. But if you're in government and you're trying to make a decision between adding more employees to the parks department, or increasing teacher pay, or putting more police officers on the street, or investing in our libraries, there is not a common metric to measure those things. It is a very different skill set that's required to manage a large organization. Now, I do think you need some executive leadership experience, and this is my Matt Wiltshire pitch to you guys and to your viewers and listeners. Like, metro government is really complex.
Yes.
There are 55 different departments. There are 17,000 employees between MNPS and metro government. There's 81 boards and commissions that have oversight of things. And so it is a complex organization. People who are running for mayor who don't have experience in local government or don't have executive experience on managing a large organization, I mean, I think you got to really ask yourself, is this the kind of leader that I want for my city at this critical point in our city's development? So I think the things that I've learned from the private sector are kind of the financial metrics, opportunity cost. What's your return on investment? Is this a smart decision? How am I balancing these alternatives that I have? And understanding the financial markets. I mean, literally, Metro is still a big issuer of debt, and there are financial implications of the decisions we make. I think I bring that and some of the management expertise about managing individuals. From the public sector, I balance that with, one, getting to work underneath three great mayors. Carl Dean, Megan Barry, David Briley. I learned a lot from each of them. I know former Mayor Purcell. He was the chair of the board of MDHA, and I've actually known him since I was a kid, and seeing how he led the city. And I've even had opportunities to meet with former Governor Bredesen, and more recently with Mayor Cooper. There are things we can learn from each of them, and it's important to really understand how government is different from the private sector, but to try and focus on how you can improve the overall quality of life for Nashvillians.
Awesome. I do, Stuart, you said you have one more question. I had one more question.
I love it. I'll take all the questions.
What is some of your favorite restaurants in Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them, and they seem to be changing all the time. This is, by the way, one of the great changes. Folks are pretty nostalgic about how Nashville has changed. The Nashville I was growing up in, like, there were no restaurants. I mean, that's not true. I actually went to International Market. My parents were married in Thailand.
Okay.
My dad was a missionary in Thailand before he went to law school. And so we would go to International Market next to Belmont's campus, and my dad would speak Thai to the family there. But there weren't a lot of restaurants back then.
Was Barbara's a big thing? Barbara's Home Cooking down in Brentwood.
Oh, I don't even remember. We didn't go to Brentwood.
I think it's like a 40-year-old restaurant.
Is that right?
This lady just cooking fried chicken and mac and cheese.
I'm embarrassed to admit I don't even know that. There's lots for me to learn. But if I were to pick one today, like one restaurant to go to, it would be Sweat's. I mean, part of that is just because I'm very good friends with David Sweat, the son, and his brothers. But it is Nashville, right? Like, one, the clientele there is a mix of all of Nashville. Yep. The food is comfort food, and if I get one meal, that's the meal that I go and get. That is not to say there aren't amazing restaurants all over, but if there's one place that I want to go and spend an hour, it's at Sweat's.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Where could people get in touch with you, and where can people learn more about your policies? Yeah, absolutely. So the website is Whiltshire.com. So that's www.wiltshire.com. It's like Wilshire Boulevard in LA, but we've got an extra T in there. So Wiltshire.com is the website. We actually have policies on there, and I don't know when your viewers will be watching this, but on Thursday, we're going to be rolling out 3 policy papers on our 3 priorities: public education, public safety, and quality of life. So come check that out. And Wiltshire.com is probably the best way to reach me. You can send me a message through the website. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Telling your story, talking about all your issues and everything. We're glad we didn't bring a buzzer for 30 seconds in a minute, but it's really good to hear all of this stuff in depth. We may have you on again before the race, or even if there's runoffs and everything like that. But thanks for coming on.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you for listening to the Nashville Daily Podcast. If you want to learn more, head to NashvilleDailyPodcast.com.
You can also follow us on social media at explore.nash on Instagram, Nashville Daily Podcast on YouTube, and explore.nash on YouTube as well.
The Nashville Daily Podcast is an Explore LLC production, copyright 2023.